It has now been nearly 8 months since the Colorado movie theater massacre that left 12 dead and 70 injured. And today, James Holmes, the alleged gunman, appeared in court to be arraigned. The judge entered a not guilty plea on behalf of Holmes. His attorney told the court that he was not ready to enter a plea, so the judge entered that plea for him and said that Holmes could still change the plea to not guilty by reason of insanity at some point down the road. Prosecutors say they plan to announce whether or not they'll seek the death penalty at a hearing in April. Holmes' trial is now scheduled to begin on August 5th. Now, since that massacre in Aurora, the U.S. has experienced at least 3 other mass shootings. It just depends on how you count. One at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin in August, another at a workplace shooting in Minneapolis in September, and then, of course, the horrific elementary school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut in December. And since Newtown, it's estimated that more than 2,600 people in this country have died at the hands of a gun. One of them is little Jonala Watkins. She is a 6-month-old girl who died this morning after she was shot 5 times on Chicago's South Side Monday. Her father had been changing her diaper in the front passenger seat of a minivan when a gunman approached them and opened fire. Jonala's mother had also been shot while carrying the child. She survived the incident. It's because of incidents like those that action is being taken on both the state and federal levels to try to curb gun violence. For example, the Colorado State Senate yesterday voted on a package of bills, including legislation that would limit the size of ammo magazines. That measure passed and now moves to the Colorado State House. State Senate also passed a measure on universal background checks. That is heading to the State House now for a final vote. Similarly, in Connecticut, legislation banning semi-automatic assault weapons in high-capacity magazines, among other things, before the General Assembly right now. In response, hundreds of people organized by the NRA gathered at the state capitol on Monday. They were there to protest those potential laws. And on the federal level, of course, progress continues. The Senate Judiciary Committee voting 10-8 today to pass a universal background check bill out of committee. The bill, which would close the so-called gun show loophole, could face significant opposition when it reaches a full Senate vote. No Republicans voted for it today. The committee also passed in a less partisan vote a program that provides grants for school security programs. But the real fireworks on this committee expected Thursday when the committee votes on Senator Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons ban. That bill would prohibit more than 150 specifically named handguns and rifles, as well as the sale of semi-automatic weapons that have detachable magazines more than 10 rounds, and military assault weapons that include flash suppressors for pistol grips. I have to say, I'm surprised that as much has gotten done already, and while nothing's gotten final approval, just getting out of committee. If you had asked me a couple of days after Newtown, having seen all of these pushes for gun control in the past, I would be a little surprised that things have gotten this far.
But why? I mean, because
after so many shootings, it tends to fade into the background, and people hold fast to their.
But you don't feel Newtown changed all that drastically?
I do now, and I'm starting to get the impression that it did. I don't think we'd see the progress that we have seen now. The only other example that I can think of is Columbine, when, and you were one of the co-sponsors of this, Congressman, the assault weapons ban, the '94 version, passed through. Do you think an assault weapons ban is possible? I know you don't think it should pass. I know you oppose it this go-round.
Well, oppose it is a strong word. It didn't accomplish anything. So did it cause any harm? No. Did it achieve anything? No. I was the point person on the Republican side. I controlled the debate on the Republican side. And the background checks are huge. That can have impact. People have a right to bear arms. I think the Constitution is going to be determined that way by the Supreme, continue to be. The question is, does the government have the right and responsibility to regulate the right? And I think they do.
What you mentioned the background check, and you said that could have significant impact. Yeah. That was a straight party line vote today in just the committee, and it's likely it'll face a party line vote when it reaches the full Senate. You got the school security, which was a more bipartisan vote today. What, if anything, should we read into the strict party line vote on background checks?
There's going to be a partisan debate. And it's conceivable that some people who vote for the assault weapon ban will lose the next election, particularly if they're west of the Mississippi. You know, kids at 4 years old are given a gun. And so when Republicans took over in 1994, we won 19 seats of very entrenched Democrats who weren't expected to lose, but they had voted for the assault weapon ban.
Dominic, the congressman said background check could be very effective, could actually change the situation for some people.
And he's the expert on
right.
this. But I hope that the congressman is wrong, because he says that he believes that the assault weapons ban won't accomplish anything. And I have to believe, Congressman, that if it's just on the books, it'll make it that much more difficult for someone.
So an assault weapon looks ugly, but you still have to keep pulling the trigger. It's semi-automatic. We're not banning semi-automatics. They have the same firepower. But
I want to stick with the background checks for just a second, because that's fine. We're close to 90% approval, 90% in polls. I think I've seen some that are 92, some that are 88, including 70+% of NRA members say they support stronger universal background checks. Republican Party, at least in the Senate today, appears to be against it. What's your read on the party line vote? Every Republican on that committee voting against background checks today.
It's very simple. The NRA is much more powerful than these public opinion polls. I frankly believe, and perhaps it's a sad commentary on American politics, but I really believe that public sentiment is, I'm not going to say it doesn't count anymore, but it's weighed less as opposed to money and the perceived impact or power of any potential organization. And when an elected official was looking at the possibility of that's why I said up top, more moderates like Chris Shays, we wouldn't be in this situation. Because when you're a right-leaning Republican and you're told, you may not even be told, but probably to your face, you're looking at a primary if you support this, it's going to make you think twice about it.
And Dominic, but the bottom line is, I'd love to know where those senators are from. It's easier for a senator who represents urban areas to vote for it. It's more difficult for senators who represent more rural states.
This all speaks to the politics of the pressures that are on these lawmakers that are helping.
And I would agree with that.
That are helping encourage or guide their votes. What's the policy objection to it? Is it that it might keep somebody incorrectly from buying a gun? That Chris Shays might want to go buy a weapon of some sort, and your name is incorrectly on the list, and just one person not being able to get a gun is...
Their fear is that you will know, everyone will know who has a weapon, then the government will publicize who has a weapon, like they did in one or two areas, which is outrageous.
The newspaper here did, the Journal News.
I mean, and so then they say, I don't have the privacy. Someone knows I have a weapon, and I don't want them to know I have a weapon.
But maybe one of you guys can explain this to me. Looking at some of the signs that were held up at that pro-gun rally in Connecticut, some of them actually said, the signs, dictators prefer citizens of the community be unarmed. I mean, the philosophy...
Well, they go back to the concept that Hitler took away people's guns, and
there's also a fear that there'll be a national registry of gun owners that the government would then be able to use to go find those.
But I can't believe, and I know, Congressman, and I guess I'm throwing this out there because you know both sides of the issue, that in the year 2013, people believe still that the government wants to take your guns.
Well, is the government less intrusive in your life now than it was 15 years ago? It's more intrusive. You empower bureaucrats, and I don't mean that in a bad way, to do lots of things. And think of all the environmental laws and so on, most which I would agree with, but the government is more intrusive, not less. They think that will happen with weapons.
But I mean, I understand that fear, but there's also a positive element to that too, which is if police are called to Andrew Whitman's house, shouldn't the police know if I've got a registered weapon at home, and if I've got a cache of weapons, shouldn't they know that too?
I think they should.
I definitely feel they should.
Well, the policy is hard to fathom in this.
Some Republicans will be voting for this when it gets to the floor.
I hope you're right.
A noticeable number.
I hope you're right. We're going to keep this conversation going online. We want you to head over to Facebook and Twitter to sound off. Do you support an assault weapons ban? We will not be keeping a registry of your opinions on this. Up next, have you ever thought about running for office? I know at least one person on this table has. You'd be amazed how much it costs these days, and so much for the average Joe running for Congress. That and more as we get into some real politics next.